I am Marcus, 35 years old, and I built my classic car restoration business from nothing into a multi-million-dollar success. Over 15 years, I assembled a $1.8 million collection of 12 rare vehicles through sweat and sacrifice. Then my parents demanded I sell everything to buy my chronically unemployed sister Amber a house. They called me selfish when I refused, so I moved all 12 cars to a secret location in the middle of the night. Today she texted me from her first job interview in 2 years. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I protected what I worked for while still trying to save my family. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Michigan, where my fascination with cars began early. My bedroom walls were plastered with posters of muscle cars and European classics. While other kids played video games, I spent hours sketching cars and reading every automotive magazine I could get my hands on. My dad Robert worked at an insurance company and had little interest in vehicles beyond basic transportation. My mom Diana taught elementary school. They were practical people who emphasized education and conventional career paths. When I turned 16, I convinced the owner of a local auto shop to hire me part-time. Old Ray taught me the basics of automotive repair, and I soaked up knowledge like a sponge. By 18, I could tear down and rebuild an engine with my eyes closed. High school counselors pushed me toward college, but I had different dreams. I wanted to restore classic cars to their former glory. My parents reluctantly accepted my decision to attend technical school instead of university, though they never fully embraced it. It is just a phase, my mother would say. He will want a real career eventually. That stung, but I was determined to prove them wrong. After technical school, I worked 80-hour weeks at 2 different auto shops, saving every penny. By 23, I had enough to rent a small garage and start my own restoration business. Those early years were brutal. I slept on a cot in my office, showered at the gym, and lived on ramen noodles. No vacations, no dating, no luxuries. Every dollar went back into the business. My first major breakthrough came when I restored a 1967 Mustang Fastback for a wealthy client who happened to know other collectors. Word spread, and suddenly I had a 6-month waiting list. By 28, I had 10 employees and had moved into a 12,000 square foot facility. By 30, my net worth crossed 7 figures. With success came the ability to build my own collection. My first purchase was a 1965 Shelby Cobra, not original but a high-quality replica. I restored myself. Its value, $85,000. Next came a 1970 Dodge Challenger RT with the rare Hemi engine option, worth $120,000. My 1955 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing cost me $400,000 but would easily sell for $600,000 today. The crown jewel is my 1963 Ferrari 250 GT Lusso, valued at $800,000. Each car represents countless hours of searching, negotiation, restoration, and care. While I built my business and collection through relentless work, my sister Amber took a different path. 2 years younger than me, she was always the favorite, pretty charming and persuasive. She started college 4 times at my parents' expense, changing majors with the seasons and never completing a degree. Her employment history reads like a case study in job-hopping retail positions, abandoned. After weeks, administrative jobs, quit because the boss was mean restaurant work beneath her dignity. Our parents consistently enabled her behavior. When Amber got fired from a boutique for excessive tardiness, Mom called the owner to argue for a second chance. When she could not pay rent, Dad covered it without question. When she totaled her car, they bought her a new one. Each time they explained it away, she is just finding herself, or she has anxiety issues, or the job market is tough these days. By her early 30s, Amber had perfected the art of extracting money from our parents. She moved back into their house with her boyfriend Kyle, a musician who had not booked a gig in years. Together they occupied the basement, while contributing nothing to household expenses. Meanwhile, our parents began dipping into their retirement funds to maintain the facade that everything was fine. I tried to help in my own way. When Amber expressed interest in office management, I offered to pay for proper certification courses. She quit after 2 sessions. I offered her a position handling phone calls at my shop, simple work with decent pay. She lasted 3 days before deciding it was too hectic. I even connected her with Mrs. Bennett, the wife of a client who needed help in her small gift shop. Amber was fired within a month, claiming workplace bullying was the reason. After that, I established boundaries. I would listen, offer advice, and provide opportunities, but no more cash handouts. This made me the villain in the family narrative. Holiday gatherings became battlegrounds. Must be nice to have so much when others have so little, Mom would say, while glancing at Amber. Dad would add, family is supposed to take care of family, as if I had abandoned my responsibilities. Through it all, my friend Trevor remained my voice of sanity. We had known each other since high school, and he understood the dynamic perfectly. They have 2 children, he once told me. One they raised to be independent, and one they raised to be dependent. Now they are angry that both turned out exactly as planned. Last Thanksgiving was particularly tense. Kyle mentioned how the housing market is rigged against regular people while staring directly at me. Amber complained about their cramped basement living situation. Mom suggested that someone who has been blessed with success might consider sharing those blessings with family. I left early with a knot in my stomach, sensing something larger was brewing. The ambush happened on a Friday evening in April. Mom called her voice suspiciously cheerful. "We are celebrating some good news," she said. "Can you come for dinner tomorrow?" Dad is grilling steaks. Wanting to maintain family peace, I agreed. When I arrived, the table was set with the good china, unusual for a casual family dinner. Dad was uncharacteristically attentive, refilling my water glass and asking about my week. Amber and Kyle sat quietly, exchanging meaningful glances. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, but I dismissed my unease as paranoia. After dinner, Mom brought out coffee and her special cheesecake, another red flag, as this was typically reserved for birthdays and anniversaries. "We wanted to talk to you about something important." Dad began folding his hands on the table. "Something that would help this family tremendously." Mom picked up smoothly. "We have been thinking about Amber and Kyle's situation. They need stability, a place of their own to build their future." "I have been saying that for years," I replied cautiously. "I can help Amber update her resume again. Or—" "That is not what we mean," Dad interrupted. "They need a house. A proper home." "Okay," I said slowly. "There are affordable starter homes in several neighborhoods. Or maybe—" "We were thinking of something more substantial," Mom continued, pulling out a folder. "We found a beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in Oakwood Estates. It would be perfect for them, especially when they start a family." My stomach dropped as she slid the listing across the table. The asking price was $850,000. "That is not a starter home," I managed to say. "This is where you come in," Dad said, his voice taking on a rehearsed quality. "We have done the calculations. If you sell your car collection, you could easily pay for this house outright and still have money left over." Time seemed to stop. I looked at each of their faces, waiting for someone to laugh and reveal it was all an elaborate joke. No one did. Amber stared at her plate, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. Kyle leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, looking satisfied. "You want me to sell my entire car collection, everything I have worked for 15 years to build, and use the money to buy my sister a luxury house?" I finally asked, my voice unnaturally calm. "When you put it that way, it sounds selfish," Mom said, frowning. "It is just stuff, Marcus. Cars sitting in a garage. This is family we are talking about. Your sister needs this," Dad added firmly. "You have so much, and she has so little. Is your collection more important than her future?" Amber finally spoke up. "I would never ask this of you," she said in a voice dripping with practiced martyrdom. "But Mom and Dad think it is the only way." "The only way," I echoed. "The only way for what?" "For her to have the life she deserves," Dad replied. "She should not have to struggle the way we did, the way you chose to. The way I chose to." Those 5 words pierced through me like a knife. My years of 16-hour workdays, sacrificed weekends, missed social events, and reinvested profits were reduced to a lifestyle choice, as if I had masochistically opted for hardship. "I have a better idea," I offered, struggling to keep my tone reasonable. I can help Amber find a job. She can live in an apartment like most people starting out. She can build her credit, save for a down payment. And, Kyle interrupted with a harsh laugh, so she can be a wage slave like the rest of America. Some brother you are. This is not about being a wage slave, I shot back. It is about personal responsibility. It is about earning what you have. Oh, here we go with the bootstrap lecture. Amber rolled her eyes. Not everyone gets lucky with a business that takes off. Lucky. The word hit me like a physical blow. I slept on a garage floor for 3 years to build that lucky business. Mom reached across the table to pat my hand. No one is saying you did not work hard, honey. But you have been blessed with success. With that comes responsibility to help those less fortunate. And your sister is less fortunate, Dad added unnecessarily. I looked at Amber, who had never held a job longer than 3 months. At Kyle, who contributed nothing but took everything. At my parents, who had enabled this behavior for decades. I have helped, I said quietly. I offered jobs, training, connections. Every opportunity was rejected or squandered. At what point does Amber take responsibility for her own life? Dad's face hardened. That is not how family works, Marcus. When someone is drowning, you do not offer swimming lessons. You pull them into the boat. Even if they keep jumping back into the water, even if they refuse to learn to swim, a house would provide the stability she needs to turn things around. Mom insisted. And what happens to the house when she cannot pay the property taxes or the insurance or the maintenance, I asked. Will you expect me to cover those costs too? A heavy silence fell over the table. My question had exposed the unspoken part of their plan. This would not be a one-time sacrifice on my part, but the beginning of a lifetime of financial obligation. I think your priorities are clear, Dad finally said, his voice cold. Those cars mean more to you than your own sister's well-being. That is not fair, I protested. This is not about the cars. It is about the principle. Principles will not put a roof over her head, Mom snapped. I did not raise you to be so selfish. Kyle decided to pile on. Must be nice hoarding all that wealth while family struggles. Those cars just sitting there doing nothing but appreciating in value. Meanwhile, real people need homes. Something inside me broke. These people, my family, had orchestrated this ambush, this guilt trip to coerce me into liquidating my life's work for someone who had never shown an ounce of personal responsibility. I stood up slowly. I need to leave. Sit down, Dad commanded. We are not finished discussing this. I am, I replied, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. There is nothing more to discuss. Mom's eyes filled with tears. So that is it. You choose objects over your sister. I choose not to enable behavior that will ultimately hurt her more than help her. I moved toward the door. You have a choice to make, Dad called after me. Either you help your sister, or you are not part of this family anymore. I paused at the doorway, the ultimatum hanging in the air like a guillotine blade. Without turning around, I said, I think you just made that choice for me. As I walked to my car, I heard the front door open behind me. It was Amber. You know they will never forgive you for this, she said calmly. Is that really what you want? I looked at my sister, this person I had grown up with but never truly understood. What I want, I said carefully, is a family that does not measure love by the dollar amount I am willing to give. Well, she replied with a shrug, we do not always get what we want, do we? I got into my car and drove away, the full weight of what had just happened pressing down on me like a physical force. The dam broke once I was alone in my car. Tears blurred my vision as I pulled over on a quiet street, my hands shaking too violently to drive safely. The family I thought I had, imperfect but still mine, had just revealed itself to be a transactional relationship, my worth measured not in love or character but in financial utility. I called Trevor, barely able to form coherent sentences, as I explained what happened. Jesus Christ, he muttered. They actually asked you to sell everything for a mansion in Oakwood. $850,000, I confirmed, my voice hollow. Plus who knows how much in ongoing expenses. That is insane, Trevor said firmly. You know that, right? This is not a normal thing to ask of anyone, let alone family. His validation helped anchor me. Maybe I was not the villain in this story after all. The thing is, I continued, I do not think they are going to let this go. Dad threatened to cut me off from the family if I did not comply. Let me guess. This is not the first time they have threatened something like that. He was right. Over the years, my parents had wielded family exclusion as a weapon whenever I failed to fall in line with their expectations. Usually I capitulated, unwilling to lose my only family. This time felt different, more final. What are you going to do? Trevor asked after a long silence. I do not know, I admitted. Go home. Sleep on it. Hope it all looks better in the morning. But as I drove home, a new worry formed. Years ago, during a renovation of my house, my parents had stayed with me for a week. Mom had insisted on having a spare key in case of emergencies. I later learned she had made a copy for Amber as well. At the time, it seemed harmless. Intrusive, but harmless. Now, with $850,000 on the line, and a family desperate enough to demand I liquidate my life's work, those keys represented a significant vulnerability. I called Trevor back. I just realized something. They have keys to my house, to the garage where I keep the cars. You think they would actually... I do not know what they would do anymore. I cut him off, but I cannot take that risk. That night I barely slept. Around 2 a.m, headlights swept across my bedroom ceiling. I rushed to the window just in time to see a familiar car cruising slowly past my house. Amber and Kyle doing a drive-by in the middle of the night, casing my property. My blood ran cold. By dawn, I had made my decision. I called Harold, my business partner and mentor, who had guided me through many crises over the years. I need to move my collection, I told him without preamble. All of it. Today. And no one can know where it is going. Harold, bless him, did not ask for explanations. I might have a solution, he said. My friend owns a warehouse about 40 miles from here. It is climate-controlled, secure, and currently empty. He owes me a favor. Perfect, I said, relief washing over me. But there is another problem. I need to move 12 cars without my family finding out. Leave that to me, Harold replied. I will call in some favors from the boys at the shop. We will make it happen tonight. Throughout the day, Harold and I planned the logistics. We would need 12 reliable drivers. The cars would need to be moved in a staggered pattern to avoid attracting attention. We mapped multiple routes to the warehouse, avoiding main roads where possible. We arranged for a security system to be installed at the warehouse on short notice. The cost was substantial, several $1,000s for the security system alone, plus compensation for the drivers and the warehouse rental. But compared to the $1.8 million at stake, it was a bargain. By late afternoon, everything was in place. I met with the team of drivers, all trusted mechanics from my shop and Harold's network. I explained that this was a sensitive family matter without going into humiliating details. They understood the need for discretion. Not a word to anyone, I emphasized. Not your wives, not your buddies, not even to each other after tonight. They nodded solemnly. These were car people. They understood what a collection like mine represented, not just money, but passion, history, craftsmanship, and years of dedicated work. As darkness fell, I paced my garage, looking at each vehicle one last time in its familiar space. The Ferrari gleaming under the overhead lights. The Mercedes with its iconic gull-wing doors. The Shelby that had started it all. Each one carried memories and represented milestones in my life. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I overreacting? Would my family really try to take my cars or pressure me into selling them against my will? Then I remembered Amber's face as she delivered her parting shot. We do not always get what we want, do we? There had been something calculating in her expression, something that suggested this confrontation was just the opening move in. A longer game. No, I was not overreacting. I was protecting what was mine, what I had earned. what I loved. At 11 p.m., the operation began. The night air carried a chill as the first of my team arrived. Ray, my oldest employee and most trusted mechanic, gave me a reassuring nod as he slipped through the side entrance of my garage. One by one, the others followed, 12 drivers in total, moving like shadows in the darkness. "All right, people," I whispered once everyone had assembled. "You all know your routes. No convoy driving. Maintain normal speed. We do not want to attract attention. If you notice anyone following you, call me immediately and divert to the backup location." We had chosen a precise order for moving the vehicles. The less valuable, less recognizable cars would go first. The showstoppers, the Ferrari, the Mercedes Gullwing, and the Shelby would move last, reducing their exposure time. First to leave was my 1978 Datsun 280Z, driven by Luis, one of our newer mechanics but a skilled driver. I watched from the darkened driveway as he eased the car onto the street, headlights off, until he reached the main road. 5 minutes later, Jen departed in my 1974 BMW 2002, following a completely different route. By midnight, 4 cars had successfully departed. I began to breathe, easier, thinking we might pull this off without incident. Then, disaster nearly struck. I was helping Marco prepare the 1969 Camaro SS when headlights appeared at the end of my street. The car moved slowly, predatorily, like a shark searching for blood in the water. "Kill the lights," I hissed, plunging the garage into darkness. We froze, barely breathing, as the vehicle crept closer. Through a crack in the garage door, I could make out the silhouette of a familiar sedan. Amber's car. Marco looked at me questioningly. I pressed a finger to my lips and pointed under the workbench. We slid beneath it, concealing ourselves from view should anyone peer through the windows. The next 60 seconds stretched like hours as the car idled directly in front of my house. My heart hammered so loudly I was certain it would give us away. What would happen if they discovered us? A confrontation, police involvement. The thought made me ill. Finally, mercifully, the car continued down the street. We waited another full minute before emerging from our hiding place. "Family issues, huh?" Marco whispered, eyebrows raised. "Something like that," I muttered, not wanting to elaborate. We resumed the operation with heightened caution. The Camaro left. Next, followed by my 1968 Mustang Fastback. With each departure, my anxiety both diminished and intensified. Fewer cars remaining meant we were closer to success, but also that the most valuable vehicles were still at risk. By 2 a.m., physical exhaustion compounded my emotional turmoil. We had successfully relocated 9 cars. Only 3 remained. The 1955 Mercedes-Benz, 300 SL Gullwing, the 1963 Ferrari, 250 GT Lusso, and my first serious restoration, a 1965 Shelby Cobra. Harold arrived to drive the Mercedes himself, understanding its immense value and the delicacy required to handle it. I watched with a mixture of pride and anxiety as he guided the automotive icon down my driveway, its distinctive silhouette disappearing into the night. The Ferrari went next, entrusted to Vincent, a fellow collector who understood its worth better than most. He treated the vehicle with reverence, checking tire pressure and oil levels before departure, despite my assurances that the car was meticulously maintained. Finally, only the Shelby remained, the heart of my collection and the cornerstone of my professional reputation. This one I would drive myself. "You good?" Trevor asked, having arrived to drive me back once the Shelby was delivered. "Not really," I admitted, "but I will be." The Shelby's engine roared to life, a sound that had always brought me comfort. Tonight it felt like a farewell. I eased the powerful machine onto the street, hyper-aware of every shadow and sound. In my rearview mirror, Trevor followed at a discreet distance in his truck. The route to the warehouse took us through back roads and industrial areas largely deserted at that hour. Still, I checked my mirrors, obsessively watching for any sign of pursuit. My knuckles turned white on the steering wheel with each passing mile. The warehouse appeared on the horizon like a fortress, a modern, nondescript building surrounded by a high fence with newly installed security cameras. Harold waited at the entrance, remote in hand, to open the gate. As I pulled into the cavernous space, relief washed over me. There they were, 11 automotive masterpieces arranged in neat rows, bathed in the soft glow of overhead lights. I parked the Shelby in the final spot, completing the collection once more. "We did it," Harold said, clapping me on the shoulder. "All safe and sound." I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed. The adrenaline that had carried me through the night evaporated, leaving me hollow and exhausted. These cars represented years of my life, countless hours of work, negotiation, restoration, and care. Now they sat in an anonymous warehouse, hidden away like shameful secrets instead of proudly displayed achievements. The drivers departed one by one, each offering a supportive word or gesture before leaving. Eventually, only Trevor, Harold, and I remained. "What happens now?" Trevor asked, voicing the question I had been avoiding. "I do not know," I admitted. "I need time to think, to plan my next move." Harold squeezed my shoulder. "Whatever you decide, we have your back." We secured the warehouse, activating the state-of-the-art security system that would alert me to any unauthorized entry. As we drove away, I looked back at the unremarkable building that now housed nearly everything I valued. Trevor dropped me off at home around 4 a.m. Walking into my empty garage was surreal, the vast space echoing with absence tool chests and workbenches, standing as silent witnesses to what had transpired. Oil stains marked where cars had once rested. A calendar on the wall showed maintenance schedules for vehicles no longer present. I entered my house half expecting to find it ransacked or my family waiting to confront me. Instead, an eerie silence greeted me. I checked the locks twice, then collapsed onto my bed, fully clothed, too exhausted to even remove my shoes. Sleep proved elusive. My mind replayed the family dinner, the midnight operation, and all the events that had led to this point. By the time dawn broke, I had come no closer to understanding how my family could have asked such a thing of me or what my next steps should be. One thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The first call came at 7:32 a.m. I had managed perhaps 2 hours of restless sleep before my phone erupted with my mother's ringtone. I let it go to voicemail. A text followed immediately. "Call US now. This is serious." By 8 a.m., I had 17 missed calls, 12 from my mother, 3 from my father, and 2 from Amber. The voicemails escalated from concern to confusion to rage. "Marcus, where are the cars? Call me back immediately. Mom, 7:33 a.m. This is not funny, Marcus. What have you done? Dad, 7:45 a.m. You sneaky bastard. You knew we were coming to talk sense into you today. Where did you hide them? Amber, 8:15 a.m. That last message confirmed my suspicions. They had indeed planned to pressure me further, perhaps even take matters into their own hands regarding my collection. The midnight operation had been justified. Around 9 a.m., I finally answered a call from my father. "Where are they?" he demanded without preamble. "Good morning to you too, Dad," I replied, striving for calm. "Do not play games with me, Marcus. Where have you taken the cars?" "Somewhere safe," I said simply. "Safe from what?" "From your family." His voice dripped with indignation. "We were coming over today to discuss a reasonable compromise. And you pull this childish stunt." "A reasonable compromise," I repeated. "Would that be selling half my collection? Instead of all of it? Or just the 3 most valuable cars?" "We are trying to help your sister start her life," he snapped. "Something you seem determined to prevent." "Amber is 32 years old," I pointed out. "Her life started a long time ago. The choices she has made are not my responsibility to fix. So you will let her suffer when you have the means to help. What kind of brother does that make you?" The conversation deteriorated from there. My father threatened to bring lawyers into the situation, a hollow threat as I had full legal ownership of every vehicle. My mother called next, taking a different approach. "I did not raise you to be so selfish," she said, her voice quavering with what I now recognized as manipulative tears. "After everything we have done for you." "What exactly have you done for me, Mom?" I asked quietly. "I put myself through technical school. I built my business without a dime from you or Dad. I have offered to help Amber in practical ways countless times. "We gave you life," she exclaimed, falling back on the ultimate parental trump card. "We raised you, fed you, clothed you. Yes, you did the legally required minimum for a child you chose to bring into the world," I replied, surprising myself with my boldness. "And I am grateful for that. But it does not entitle you to my life's work." By mid-afternoon, the conflict had expanded beyond my immediate family. Aunt Patricia called to tell me how disappointed she was in my selfish attitude. Uncle George suggested I man up and help my sister. Cousin Jennifer sent a text accusing me of hoarding wealth while family struggles. It became clear that my parents had launched a coordinated campaign to pressure me through extended family. They had presented a carefully edited version of events poor Amber needed help. Wealthy Marcus refused to share his good fortune-loving parents caught in the middle of a selfish son's stubbornness. Then came the social media barrage. Amber posted a lengthy diatribe about millionaire brothers who choose material possessions over family, without naming me directly, a thin veneer of plausible deniability over an obvious attack. Kyle shared an article about wealth inequality with the comment, "Some people have multiple luxury cars, while others cannot afford housing, often in the same family." Friends and acquaintances began messaging me, asking if everything was okay. Business associates mentioned seeing concerning posts and wanted to check on me. The public shaming strategy was in full effect. Through it all, Harold remained steadfastly supportive. He ran interference at the shop, telling curious employees that my car collection was being photographed for a magazine feature, a plausible explanation for their sudden absence. He brought me dinner when I could not face leaving my house, fearing a confrontation with family members who might be watching the property. "You know this will blow over eventually," he assured me, over pizza and beer in my kitchen. "People have short attention spans these days." Maybe I said, unconvinced. But my family has a long memory for perceived slights. The emotional toll began to manifest physically. I lost weight. Sleep became a luxury I rarely enjoyed. Constant anxiety kept me on edge, jumping at every car that drove past my house or every phone notification. One particularly difficult day, I ran into my childhood friend Ethan at the grocery store. He had seen Amber's social media posts and asked for my side of the story. After hearing the full account, his face darkened with anger. "That is so messed up," he said vehemently. "Your family is being toxic as hell." "Maybe I am overreacting," I offered, still unable to fully shed the guilt my parents had cultivated in me for decades. "Are you kidding me? They ambushed you with a demand to liquidate $2 million of your property, then launched a smear campaign when you refused. That is not normal family behavior, Marcus. That is manipulation and emotional abuse." Hearing someone outside the situation frame it so bluntly was surprisingly validating. Perhaps I was not crazy for protecting what was mine. At Trevor's suggestion, I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Winters, who specialized in family trauma. Our first session was revelatory. "What you are describing," she said after I recounted recent events, "is a family system with deeply entrenched roles. You have been cast as the provider, the responsible one, the fixer. Your sister has been cast as the needy one, the perpetual child. These roles serve a purpose in your family dynamic, and your refusal to continue playing your assigned part has thrown the entire system into chaos." "So this is my fault?" I asked, bracing for more guilt. "Not at all," she replied firmly. "This is a natural consequence of setting healthy boundaries in an unhealthy system. The negative reaction you are experiencing is actually evidence that your boundaries are necessary." Over the following weeks, therapy helped me understand the dysfunctional patterns I had been participating in for years. I realized that my compliance with increasingly unreasonable demands had only encouraged more demands. By saying no, I had disrupted a long-standing pattern of enablement that extended far beyond my sister to encompass our entire family's way of relating to one another. After a month of unrelenting family pressure, I made the difficult decision to temporarily cut contact. I blocked my parents' and sister's numbers, muted family members on social media, and instructed my assistant to screen all calls to my business. It was a painful step, but a necessary one for my mental health. 2 weeks into this communication blackout, I had a chance encounter that shifted my perspective even further. While picking up lunch at a local deli, I ran into Mrs. Bennett, the gift shop owner who had briefly employed Amber. "Marcus," she said warmly, "it has been too long. How are you holding up?" "You have heard something?" I asked, immediately on guard. She nodded sympathetically. "Small town. Word gets around. Your sister has been telling quite a story." I sighed heavily. "I can imagine." "I doubt that," Mrs. Bennett replied with surprising sharpness. "She is telling people I fired her because I was jealous of her youth and looks. That I bullied her until she could not take it anymore." "That is not what happened," I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "I caught her stealing, Marcus. Not just a trinket or two, she had been systematically taking expensive items for months. When confronted, she threatened to tell people I had made advances toward her if I reported it to the police. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I had always known Amber was irresponsible, but this level of deliberate deception and manipulation was something else entirely. "I am so sorry," I said, genuinely ashamed. "I had no idea." Mrs. Bennett patted my arm. "Of course you did not. How could you? She is your sister. And she is very good at spinning tales where she is always the victim." This conversation was the final piece of clarity I needed. The sister I had been trying to protect and support for years was not just unmotivated or struggling. She was actively dishonest and manipulative. The parents I had been trying to please were not just concerned for their daughter. They were enablers of toxic behavior that hurt everyone involved, including Amber herself. With this new understanding, my path forward became clearer. I would maintain my boundaries not just for my own sake, but because enabling Amber further would only ensure she never developed the skills and character needed for a fulfilling life. It was a painful realization, but also strangely liberating. For the first time in years, I felt free of the crushing weight of unearned family obligation. 2 months passed in relative peace. I focused on my business, which thankfully continued to thrive despite the family drama. Every few days, I drove out to the warehouse to check on my collection, finding solace in detailing each vehicle and performing routine maintenance. These quiet hours alone, with the physical manifestations of my passion and hard work, became a form of therapy. My extended family gradually stopped their campaign as it became clear I would not be bullied into compliance. Social media attacks from Amber and Kyle tapered off as they found new targets for their grievances. Life began to establish a new normal one, without the constant tension of family obligations, but also without the comfort of belonging that family can provide. Then on a Tuesday morning in July, my phone chimed with a text from an unsaved number I immediately recognized as Amber's. "I have a job interview tomorrow at Blackwell Industries. First one in 2 years. Wish me luck. La." I stared at the message for a full minute, trying to decipher the angle. Was this a peace offering? A manipulation tactic? The start of a new guilt campaign? With Amber, it was impossible to know. I showed the text to Trevor over lunch that day. "Smells like bait," he said immediately. "She is probably trying to rope you back in. Next message will be about needing money for interview clothes or something." Maybe I conceded. But what if it is genuine? What if she is actually trying to turn things around? After everything that has happened, that would be quite the 180. Still, the possibility nagged at me. On a hunch, I called Blackwell Industries, a local manufacturing company, and asked for their HR department. "I am calling to confirm an interview for Amber Lawrence tomorrow," I said, using my most professional voice. "I am her job coach. Just double-checking the details for her. Yes, we have her scheduled for 10 a.m. The receptionist confirmed. Entry-level administrative position with Mr. Davidson. So the interview was real, at least. I sent a carefully neutral response to Amber's text. "Good luck with the interview." Her reply came immediately. "Thanks. Nervous, but trying. No request for money. No guilt trip, just a simple acknowledgement of vulnerability." It was so uncharacteristic of the Amber I knew that my suspicion only deepened. She is playing the long game, Trevor warned when I shared this development. Do not get pulled back into their toxic orbit. His concern was valid. Over the years, I had seen brief periods of apparent growth from Amber, only for her to revert to old patterns once she had extracted whatever support she was seeking. This could easily be another such cycle. I resolved to remain cautious but not completely closed off. If Amber was genuinely trying to improve her situation, I did not want to be the obstacle in her path. 5 days passed with no further contact. Then on Sunday evening, another text arrived. I got the job. Starting Monday. Thank you for not telling me I could not do it. Again, I searched for the hidden agenda, the veiled request, the subtle manipulation, and found none. The message seemed sincere in its simplicity. Congratulations, I replied. That is great news. Would you want to get coffee sometime, she wrote back. Just to talk. No parents, no Kyle. No Kyle. That was interesting. Had they broken up, I hesitated, weighing the potential for drama against the possibility of reconciliation. Sure, I finally responded. When and where? We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. Public enough to discourage any scene-making, but quiet enough for private conversation. I arrived early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance and exit. Old habits die hard. When Amber walked in, I barely recognized her. Gone were the designer clothes and carefully styled hair that had been her trademark for years. Instead, she wore simple black pants and a modest blouse, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked ordinary, adult. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from me. Hey yourself, I replied, studying her face. The entitlement and perpetual dissatisfaction that had once been her baseline expression were noticeably absent. In their place was something I had rarely seen on my sister's face: humility. So I began after our coffees arrived. Blackwell Industries. Administrative work. She nodded. Assistant to the production manager. Data entry, scheduling some customer contact. Nothing glamorous, but it is a start. It is a good company, I offered. Stable. Room for advancement if you put in the work. That is what I have heard. She stirred her coffee unnecessarily. Listen, Marcus. I did not ask you here to make small talk. I owe you an apology. A big one. I kept my expression neutral, waiting. Amber had apologized before grand, tearful performances that inevitably led to requests for money or favors. This felt different, but I had been fooled before. What happened with the cars and the house? It was wrong. All of it. I was wrong to expect you to bankroll my life. Mom and Dad were wrong to pressure you. We treated you like an ATM instead of a person, and I am genuinely sorry for that. Her words sounded rehearsed but not insincere, as if she had practiced saying something difficult but true. What brought on this revelation, I asked, still cautious. She took a deep breath. Rock bottom, basically. After you moved your cars, which was a boss move, by the way. You think so? I interrupted, surprised by her characterization. Absolutely. It was the first time anyone in the family stood up to the collective guilt trip. It was impressive. She smiled briefly before continuing. Anyway, after that, Mom and Dad doubled down on the Poor Amber campaign. They started dipping even deeper into their retirement to keep supporting me and Kyle. Then Dad had that health scare. What health scare? I sat up straighter. No one told me. Minor heart attack. He is fine now, she added quickly, seeing my alarm. But it was a wake-up call. I realized their enabling was hurting them too. And then Kyle. Her voice trailed off, a flash of pain crossing her face. What about Kyle? I prompted gently. He left, she said simply. Once he realized the gravy train had derailed, he suddenly needed space to focus on his music. Translation. He found someone else with resources to exploit. She laughed bitterly, then composed herself. The thing is, it was the best thing that could have happened. Without Kyle's constant negativity and Mom and Dad's enabling, I had to face some hard truths about myself. I started therapy secretly at first. That caught my attention. Therapy. She nodded. 3 months now. It has been. Enlightening. Painful but enlightening. My therapist helped me see how I have been using learned helplessness to manipulate the people around me. How I have been sabotaging myself to avoid the risk of real failure. I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of deception and finding none. There was something different in her eyes, a clarity and self-awareness I had never seen before. I am not asking for forgiveness, she continued. I have not earned that yet. I just wanted you to know that I see what I did wrong and I am working to change it. The job is part of that change, I asked. It is a start. I have a lot to prove to myself more than anyone. I need to show myself I can stand on my own 2 feet. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Amber explained how she had moved out of our parents' house and into a tiny studio apartment she could barely afford. How she had sold most of her designer clothes and electronics to cover the security deposit. How she was learning to cook simple meals instead of ordering takeout. Small steps, but significant ones for someone who had never faced consequences or practiced self-denial. What about Mom and Dad? I finally asked. How are they taking your newfound independence? Amber grimaced. Mixed reactions. Dad seems quietly relieved. I think the heart attack scared him into realizing he needs to focus on himself and retirement. Mom is struggling. She has built her identity around being needed, especially by me. My independence threatens that narrative. Her insight surprised me. The Amber I knew had never been this perceptive about family dynamics or her role within them. And they still blame me for not buying you a house, I asked, only half joking. Mom does, Amber admitted. Dad has stopped mentioning it. I think he is embarrassed about the whole thing now, though he will never admit it. As our conversation drew to a close, I found myself cautiously optimistic. This was not the instantaneous redemption of a fairy tale, but the messy, incremental growth of real life. Amber was not magically transformed into a different person, but she seemed to be making genuine efforts to change her destructive patterns. I should get going, she said, eventually gathering her things. Early day tomorrow. First full week on the job. Good luck, I offered. And Amber, I am proud of you for taking these steps. Her eyes filled with tears, not the manipulative tears I had seen so often, but genuine emotion. That means more than you know. As I watched her leave, I realized I had been holding my breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop the request for money, the subtle guilt trip, the veiled demand. It never came. Perhaps, just perhaps, something had truly changed. 6 months later, against all odds and my own skepticism, Amber remained employed at Blackwell Industries. Not only employed, but thriving. She had received a small promotion to executive assistant after her supervisor recognized her organizational skills. She paid her rent on time, lived within her modest means, and continued therapy. Our relationship rebuilt slowly, one careful conversation at a time. Trust, once shattered, does not mend easily. But over coffees, occasional dinners, and even a few weekend hiking trips, a new hobby she had discovered, we established a more authentic connection than we had ever had before. My relationship with our parents evolved more unevenly. Dad came around, first calling me one day out of the blue. I owe you an apology, he said stiffly, clearly uncomfortable but determined. What we asked was inappropriate. I was worried about Amber. But that did not give us the right to demand you sacrifice your life's work. It was not a perfect apology. He did not fully acknowledge the manipulation, the ambush, or the family campaign that followed. But it was sincere, and I accepted it as the best he could offer. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. Your cars, he said hesitantly, are they still safe? They are, I confirmed. All secure. Good, he replied. That is good. You worked hard for them. Coming from a man who had once dismissed my passion as a phase and my career choice as second-rate. This simple acknowledgement felt monumental. Mom proved more resistant to change. She maintained that I had overreacted by moving my collection, and that family should help family without keeping score. Our conversations remained tense, often ending in strained silence. But even she gradually stopped mentioning the house or suggesting I owed Amber financial support. One milestone day, I invited Amber to see my car collection for the first time since childhood. We drove to the warehouse together, making small talk about her job and my business. "I cannot believe you moved all these in one night," she marveled as I unlocked the heavy security door. "It must have been like a heist movie." "It felt like one," I admitted, "especially when you and Kyle drove by during the operation." She winced. "God, we were awful. Kyle actually thought we could intimidate you into selling the Ferrari first. He had already planned how to spend his share of the money." Inside the warehouse, I flipped on the lights, revealing the 12 vehicles arranged in neat rows. Amber gasped audibly. "I forgot how beautiful they are," she whispered, approaching the nearest car, a 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, in pristine turquoise and white. I never really looked at them before. They were just Marcus's expensive toys in my mind. I watched as she circled the Ferrari, running her finger delicately along its flawless finish. "This one is worth about 800,000, I replied. "Give or take." She shook her head in wonder. "And I expected you to just hand it over. I cannot believe how entitled I was." We spent 2 hours in the warehouse as I showed her each car, explaining its history, the restoration work involved, and its significance to automotive culture. She listened attentively, asking intelligent questions and expressing genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship involved. "Thank you for showing me all this," she said as we prepared to leave. "I understand now why you protected them. They are not just possessions. They are your life's work." Part of it I agreed. The physical part. That visit marked a turning point in our relationship. For the first time, Amber saw me not as a resource to be tapped or an obstacle to her desires, but as a person with passions, accomplishments, and boundaries deserving of respect. In the months that followed, we had several difficult but necessary conversations about our childhood, our parents' different treatment of us, and the family dynamics that had shaped us both. Amber acknowledged how her dependency had been cultivated and rewarded. I admitted my resentment, and how it had sometimes prevented me from seeing her as more than her worst behaviors. "We were both playing roles assigned to us," she observed during one particularly insightful discussion. "I was the needy one. You were the responsible one. Breaking out of those roles feels like betraying the family script." Instead of simply giving Amber money when she faced financial challenges, I began offering financial education. We sat together, working through budgeting basics, credit management, and saving strategies. I connected her with a financial advisor who specialized in helping people with limited income build stability. Family therapy was less successful. Mom participated reluctantly, often becoming defensive when the therapist highlighted enabling behaviors. Dad tried harder but struggled to articulate his emotions or acknowledge his role in creating unhealthy family patterns. We managed 3 sessions before agreeing to pause the process. Around Christmas, I made a symbolic gesture. I brought one car back to my home garage, the Shelby Cobra that had started my collection. It was a statement of cautious optimism, a sign that I no longer felt my possessions were under immediate threat from my own family. Amber met someone new, a project manager at Blackwell named David, who treated her with respect and expected adult behavior in return. Unlike Kyle, he had his own career, his own interests, and healthy boundaries. Their relationship developed slowly based on mutual respect rather than codependency. Perhaps the most surprising development came in February when Amber called with an unusual request. "I want to buy a car," she announced. "Nothing fancy, a 1992 Mazda Miata I found for $3,000. It needs work, but it is mechanically sound. Would you help me evaluate it? Maybe give me some pointers on restoration." I agreed, immediately touched by her interest in my world, and impressed by her realistic approach, starting small within her means, with a project that matched her beginner skill level. We purchased the Miata together, with Amber paying for it entirely from her savings. Every other weekend, we worked on it side by side in a corner of my shop. I taught her basic maintenance, first oil changes, brake pad replacement, tune-ups. As her confidence grew, we tackled more complex tasks: upholstery repair, paint touch-ups, suspension work. One Saturday, as we finished installing a new convertible top on the Miata, Amber stepped back to admire our work. "I get it now," she said softly. "Get what?" "The satisfaction. Creating something with your own hands. Fixing something broken. Seeing tangible results from your effort." She wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek. "It feels good in a way that buying something new never does." Her words captured perfectly what I had tried to explain to our family for years, that my car collection represented more than monetary value or status symbols. Each vehicle embodied countless hours of problem-solving, skill-building, and the deep satisfaction of creation and preservation. The journey of the past year had taught me profound lessons about family boundaries and true support. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to let them face the natural consequences of their actions. I learned that standing firm against manipulation is not selfish but necessary for everyone's well-being. Most importantly, I learned that family relationships based on genuine care rather than obligation are worth fighting for, even when that fight requires painful honesty and temporary distance. Our family continues to heal imperfectly and unevenly. Mom still occasionally makes passive-aggressive remarks about my fortune, but they lack the sting they once carried. Dad has developed a surprising interest in classic cars, occasionally joining Amber and me for restoration sessions. Amber herself remains committed to her independence, working through setbacks without falling back into old patterns of helplessness. As for my car collection, it has largely returned to my home garage, one vehicle at a time, as my trust in the family's respect for boundaries has grown. Each homecoming feels like a small victory, not over my family, but over the toxic dynamics that once threatened to tear us apart. The Ferrari symbol of the house that almost destroyed us remains at the warehouse. Perhaps someday it too will come home. Or perhaps it will fund a new chapter in my life. Either way, the decision will be mine, made freely without coercion or guilt, as all important choices should be. Have you ever had to protect something you valued from the people who should have supported you? Has a family member ever demanded something unreasonable from you? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Also, if this journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about setting boundaries and building healthier relationships. Remember, sometimes the most difficult roads lead to the most meaningful destinations. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to protect what matters to you while still keeping your heart open to genuine change.